The beach house my parents had given me was now apparently a gift from my husband to his secretary, Chloe Sanders. She had posted a 9 picture collage on her social media from a party by the pool, and she made sure to tag the location. Her caption was bubbly. A huge thank you to our wonderful CEO for this amazing villa. I'll be sure to work even harder from now on. But the pictures the housekeeper sent me told a different story. The sculptures in the garden were broken, and the flowers I had planted with my own hands were all gone, ripped out from the roots. I sent the photos to my husband, Ethan Vance, with a simple question. What's going on, Mr. Vance? Why is another woman living in my house? He sent a voice message back almost right away. I could hear the sound of the ocean in the background. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like we don't have other houses to stay in. I sent one final text. You have 3 hours. I want her out of there, and I want the house put back exactly the way it was. Ethan saw the message but didn't bother to reply. 5 minutes later, I sold the villa for $1. Then, I went to his study and destroyed his entire antique collection, smashing every single piece until there was nothing left but a pile of fragments. When someone doesn't want to listen to words, I have no issue with teaching them a lesson they won't soon forget. Just as I put my phone down, it started ringing. The screen showed Ethan's name. It was the same man who had just ignored me. Amelia Reed, what did you just do? He yelled, his voice thick with anger. Why did security just throw Chloe out? I answered him calmly. That house is mine. I just sold it. The new owner had only one rule. He wanted everyone and everything cleared out within the hour. There was a long, shocked silence from his end of the line. Amelia, I think you're misunderstanding something, Ethan said, his voice suddenly much softer. There's nothing going on between me and Chloe. She's just my secretary. He paused for a moment before adding, You're overreacting. Don't you think you're being a little too harsh and sensitive? I let out a small laugh. Ethan, I'm not the one who crossed a line here. You're the one who has no sense of boundaries or self-respect, and now you have the guts to try and blame me. He didn't answer that. Instead, he tried to change the subject. Amelia, you have so many houses you're not even using. Letting Chloe stay in one was just a practical decision. Nothing inappropriate happened, I swear. After another pause, his tone changed again, becoming annoyed. You really shouldn't be so possessive. I smiled, but it was a cold smile. Well, since you're so generous with my things, I'm sure you won't mind that your precious antiques have been turned into garbage. With that, I opened my phone's photo gallery and sent him a few pictures. The photos showed his beloved collection in complete ruin, with shattered porcelain and splintered wood covering the floor. The silence on the phone was long and heavy. Finally, he spoke, his voice slow and deliberate. Amelia Reed. When he used my full name, it meant he was furious, but I didn't care. Ethan, I said in a cool voice, I hope the pictures were clear. This is what happens when you decide to test my patience. If you ever try something like this again, what you lose will be a lot more valuable than a few broken vases. I hung up before he could say another word. In all the years we had been married, Ethan and I had hardly ever fought so intensely. But that didn't mean I was afraid of a fight. I just knew how to pick my battles. What I would never do, though, is let someone walk all over me. The second you start letting your boundaries slide in a marriage, you're just giving the other person permission to push them even further. Besides, our marriage was never really about love to begin with. The Vance family was desperate to get into the upper echelons of society, and they needed the power and influence of my family, the Reeds. That was how our marriage came to be. It was a business deal, an alliance between two powerful families. When I first met Ethan, he was charming and gentle. He had a handsome face and a calm way about him that made him seem trustworthy and capable. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, building a life with a man like him wouldn't be so terrible. So I went along with our family's arrangement. To everyone's surprise, we actually did grow to care for each other. We had a few happy years together and were often called the perfect couple, a great match of looks and intelligence. But no matter how good things were between us, I always held on to one truth. I had to look out for myself first. Eventually, the initial passion wore off and life settled into a comfortable routine. I accepted that most love stories lose their spark over time, and ours was no different. What I couldn't accept, however, was a third person being the cause of that spark dying out. Ever since I was a little girl, there was one thing I couldn't stand: people touching my things. If something I owned got dirty, I threw it out without a second thought. If a person became tainted, I treated them the same way. Ethan hadn't tried to contact me since our fight. That was his typical way of handling things. Whenever he was faced with an uncomfortable truth, he would retreat into silence, acting as if the problem would just disappear if he ignored it. That was until that afternoon when I got a message from my friend Olivia. "Amelia, why are you ignoring me? I just saw you at the venue. I was calling your name, but you didn't even look over." I frowned and typed back a quick reply. "I haven't gone out at all today. You must have seen someone who looks like me." "Are you sure it wasn't you? I saw that royal blue mermaid dress you had custom made. And you were with President Vance." Another message from Olivia came through. "Wait, I have a picture from the front." My phone buzzed again, and this time an image loaded on the screen. There was Ethan, looking sharp in a perfectly fitted black suit. Beside him, Chloe was wearing my custom gown, smiling and talking to someone just out of the frame. I stared at the picture for a good 10 seconds, my hand frozen in place before I could even think straight. Another message came through, this one from Ethan's executive assistant. It included a screenshot from Chloe's social media page. "My first time at the Cloud Summit auction. So thankful to President Vance for giving me the chance to see how the other half lives." With a heart emoji. The picture showed her sitting in the front row of the auction, with Ethan right next to her, a small smile on his face. It was obvious he had not only allowed her to take the photo, but had also approved of her posting it. A memory came rushing back to me. Ethan hated having his picture taken. Even back when we were at our happiest, he would always frown and refuse whenever I wanted to take a picture together. And yet here he was, letting another woman sit by his side, wear my dress, and post a photo of them for the whole world to see. I suddenly realized that the lesson I had taught him this morning was nowhere near harsh enough. He hadn't just brought another woman to one of the most exclusive events of the year. He had done it with his quiet approval. He let her wear my clothes and gave her the attention that should have been mine. Without even thinking, I forwarded the photo to Ethan. "Explain this. Why is she wearing my dress?" The message showed that he had read it, but he didn't reply. I gave him a few minutes and then sent another picture, one I had just taken of myself. A moment later, Olivia messaged me again. "Amelia, what did you send President Vance?" He just shot up from his seat and ran out of the room. Chloe tried to grab him, but he just pushed her away. I didn't reply to her. Ethan was already calling me. In the picture I had sent him, I was sitting calmly in front of our fireplace, holding a small, intricately carved wooden box. The box was polished and clearly well cared for. Ethan's voice was shaking when he spoke, a mix of panic and rage. "Amelia, put that down. What are you doing?" I asked him quietly. Inside that box were his most treasured possessions: a few old, faded photographs, a delicate bracelet, and a jade pendant. The girl in the pictures was smiling brightly. She was Ethan's first love, the one his family had mentioned to me once. The girl who had died from an illness years ago, his white moonlight, as they called her. And now, I finally understood his strange behavior. Chloe looked almost exactly like her. "Amelia, please, don't touch those things," Ethan said again, his voice now almost begging. "Ethan, you know how much I hate it when people touch my things," I replied, my voice cold. "The way you're feeling right now is exactly how I feel. So, here's what you're going to do. You're going to tell Chloe to take off that dress. There's a lounge at the auction hall. She can change there." There was a long silence on the phone. Then Ethan finally spoke, his voice defensive. "Amelia, you only wear those dresses once. What's the big deal if she wears one?" I let out a soft laugh, but my tone was icy. "Ethan, even if I never wear it again, my things are still my things, and nobody touches them without my permission. You have two options. Either you make sure Chloe is out of that dress before the auction starts, or—" I gave the wooden box a little shake, and the sound of its contents rattling was faint but clear over the phone. You deal with the consequences. With that, I hung up. It wasn't long before my phone started buzzing with a stream of messages from Olivia. Amelia, what did you say to him? Your husband just ran back in here looking like he'd seen a ghost. He didn't say a word, just grabbed Chloe and dragged her out. Wait a minute, they're back. Oh my God, what is happening? Chloe, she's wearing a janitor's uniform. I smiled to myself. The outcome was even better than I had imagined. Olivia continued to send updates. Amelia, the look on Chloe's face is absolutely priceless. Everyone is whispering and staring at her. I'm feeling embarrassed for her just by watching. I quickly replied, Olivia, take a few pictures for me. She sent them over right away. In the photos, Ethan sat with a cold, unreadable expression on his face. Next to him, Chloe looked completely humiliated, dressed in a baggy, ill-fitting gray uniform. Her makeup was smeared and her eyes were red and swollen. Olivia sent another message, her tone full of glee. This auction has a strict no leaving early policy. That girl is going to have to sit through the whole thing in that outfit, she added. Your husband looks like he's about to explode. His face is completely black. Amelia, this was a brilliant move. Chloe should have known better than to mess with you. She probably still has no idea what just hit her. After the auction was over, another message came through. They're finally leaving. Your husband looks like he's about to pass out from anger. Chloe is crying so hard she can barely walk. A new picture appeared. The royal blue mermaid dress that Chloe had been so proud to wear online was now bunched up in a trash can. I got the picture, Olivia wrote. I immediately uploaded the photo to my social media account with a simple caption, "Trash belongs in the trash." In less than 5 minutes, the post had over 100 likes. Anyone with half a brain could see that the dress in the picture was the same one Chloe had been showing off in her own posts. The meaning behind my post was crystal clear. Olivia messaged me again. Vance lost a lot of face today. Are you sure he won't take it out on you when he gets home? I replied calmly, don't worry, even if he wanted to, he wouldn't dare. Later that night, Ethan came home. He walked into the living room looking like he had a dark cloud hanging over him and stopped right in front of me. Amelia, where is it? He asked, his voice low and raspy. I just looked at him without saying anything. He was clearly trying his best to keep his anger in check. Amelia, he said slowly, I know what I did today was wrong. I didn't think about how it would make you feel, and that was my fault. But I did what you wanted. I embarrassed myself in front of everyone. Can we just stop this now? Please, just give me back my things. I raised an eyebrow. Ethan, you brought this on yourself. Your actions led to your own humiliation, not mine. Are you really not going to explain anything? Ethan looked away, unable to meet my eyes. She's just a junior employee, that's it. I was just rewarding her for her hard work. I let out a bitter laugh and took a step closer to him. Ethan, there are a million ways to reward an employee. Why did you have to choose the most inappropriate ones? A luxury villa, a ticket to an exclusive auction, a designer gown that costs a fortune. Don't you realize what those things mean to a girl like her? You won't even take a single picture with me, your wife, but you're willing to pose for photos with her. Every time you give in to her, you're sending her the message that she's more than just an employee. That's why she got so bold, why she even dared to challenge me. Tell me, does her mediocre work performance really deserve that kind of reward? Ethan didn't say anything. I looked him straight in the eyes. You treat her this way because she reminds you of your first love, don't you? I said it plainly, cutting right through his excuses. A replacement is still just a replacement. No matter how much she looks like her, she can never be her. Ethan, you need to understand that. His breathing became heavier, but he still didn't speak. I took the small wooden box from behind my back and held it out to him, softening my tone. Ethan, I understand why you're attached to her memory. I've never tried to take away from the beautiful relationship you two had, but I hope you won't destroy the relationship we have, either. What happened today can be the first time, but it also has to be the last. Ethan took the wooden box and carefully set it aside. Then, without saying a word, he pulled me into a tight hug. Amelia, I'm so sorry, he whispered, his voice full of emotion. I know I was wrong. There's nothing going on between me and Chloe. There won't be any more, I promise. I'll stay away from her from now on. This will never happen again. Please, don't be angry with me anymore. His voice was trembling as he held me, his arms wrapped tightly around my waist. I let out a long, quiet sigh, nodded, and hugged him back. The next day, the story of what happened at the auction, combined with the post I had shared online, made Chloe the laughingstock of the entire company. Ethan's sudden change in behavior, his obvious efforts to avoid her, was a clear sign to everyone else. In a place like our company, full of people looking for any advantage, it didn't take long for her situation to change. The same coworkers who had been complimenting her just the day before now avoided her completely. Some took it even further. Someone printed out photos of Chloe at the auction in the janitor's uniform and posted them all over the company bulletin board. In the pictures, her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she looked utterly humiliated. People started to point and whisper whenever she walked down the hallways. That's the shameless one, wearing the clothes the boss's wife threw out. Her days at work became a living hell. The cafeteria staff began messing with her food. She would take one bite and immediately look sick. One time, when she was in the restroom, someone locked the door from the outside, and she was trapped in there for the whole afternoon. The worst part was that everyone else just pretended like nothing was wrong. She even tried calling Ethan for help, but he saw her name on his phone and just ended the call. I heard about all of this from my executive assistant. President Reed, she asked me carefully, do you want me to do something to make it stop? I shook my head. Assistant Lee, don't think I'm that kind, and don't underestimate her. She made her choices, and now she has to deal with the consequences. A week later, my assistant told me that Chloe hadn't come to work for 3 days. I figured she had finally had enough and was going to quit, but I was wrong. I had underestimated her again. That day, Ethan had a huge business meeting scheduled, a potential international deal that was worth at least $100 million. Just 20 minutes before the meeting was supposed to start, his phone rang. It was Chloe. Ethan declined the call without a second thought. But a few seconds later, he got a text message. President Vance, I'm so sorry to bother you right now. I was hoping I could thank you in person, but I guess this is where it ends. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. If there's a next life, I'll find a way to repay you. Ethan's face immediately turned pale. He tried to call her back, but the phone just kept ringing. In a panic, he called his assistant and told them to find Chloe's location using her phone's GPS. Postpone the meeting, he said abruptly. Without another word to anyone, Ethan ran out of the office. When Ethan got to Chloe's apartment, he found her unconscious in the bathtub. Blood was flowing from a deep cut on her left wrist, turning the water a dark, frightening red. Her face was pale, and her breathing was weak. In a state of panic, Ethan picked her up and rushed her to the hospital, holding her in his arms the entire way. I heard later that during the drive, her body started to get cold, and in that moment, Ethan was reminded of the day his first love had died in his arms. Luckily, they made it to the hospital in time, and Chloe was saved. Later, when Ethan found out about how badly Chloe had been bullied at work, he was furious. But at the time, I didn't know any of this was happening. That same morning, I had gone to the same hospital for a routine checkup. The doctor told me that I was 6 weeks pregnant. I was so happy I could barely contain myself, and I couldn't wait to tell Ethan. Just as I was walking down the hallway, I saw him getting out of the elevator. I smiled and hurried towards him, ready to share my wonderful news. But before I could even say a word, Ethan raised his hand and slapped me hard across the face. The slap was so forceful it knocked me to the ground, my cheeks stinging with pain. I just sat there, completely stunned, unable to understand what had just happened. In all our years together, Ethan had never once been violent with me. Amelia, he yelled, his voice filled with rage. How could you be so cruel? He stood over me, his eyes full of anger and disgust. I did what you asked. I stayed away from Chloe, but that wasn't enough for you, was it? You couldn't stop until you pushed her to the edge. I looked up at him, confused and trembling. She's in this hospital right now, fighting for her life, and you show up here with a smile on your face. Are you here to finish the job? Why did I ever marry someone as heartless as you? I clutched the pregnancy report tightly in my hand, trying to find the words to explain, but Ethan didn't give me a chance. He turned his back on me and walked away. As I sat on the cold hospital floor, his words kept replaying in my mind. From the way he was acting, I slowly started to put the pieces together. Chloe had tried to kill herself, and Ethan thought it was my fault. A little while later, I got a call from the executive assistant. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice hesitant. "I just wanted to say goodbye. Mr. Vance has fired me. He said I was abusing my power. Blake is going to be my replacement." "What?" I gasped. "It's not just me. Everyone who ever had a problem with Blake has been fired. Almost the entire department is gone." While I had been dreaming about our new baby, Ethan had already made his choice. He had chosen Chloe. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with anger. I tore the pregnancy report into tiny shreds and let them fall to the floor. If this was the choice Ethan had made, then he shouldn't be surprised when I made mine. I packed a bag and went back to my parents' house. When my father saw me, he didn't ask any questions. He just told the housekeeper to get my old room ready. But my mother could tell something was wrong. "Amelia," she said softly, sitting next to me on my bed. "Did you and Ethan have a fight?" I just shook my head and didn't say anything. The bruise on my wrist from when I fell at the hospital was still visible, and my mother's eyes went straight to it. She took my arm in her hands, her brow furrowed. "What happened to your wrist?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. "It's nothing," I said quietly. "I just bumped into something." I didn't tell them that Ethan had hit me. I didn't say anything about Chloe either. I just told them that I needed some time to rest and think. But my parents weren't stupid. It didn't take them long to find out what had really happened. For 2 weeks, Ethan didn't call or send a single message. The cold silence between us wore away the last bit of warmth in our marriage. Then, I started seeing posts from Chloe on social media. She posted pictures of herself at different events with Ethan, each photo carefully chosen, as if she were practicing to be the new Mrs. Vance. President Vance took me to the International Business Summit today. So many people thought I was his wife. Thank you, President Vance, for the limited edition handbag. Only someone who really knows me would understand my taste. President Vance says I'm his lucky charm. He just closed another big deal because of me. Every caption was paired with a picture of her looking cozy with Ethan. She wanted me to see them. Every post was a deliberate jab. I just laughed quietly and turned off my phone. She was like a grasshopper in late autumn, enjoying one last jump before the frost came. 2 weeks later, just as I had quietly planned, a group of major investors, led by my father, started pulling their money out of the Vance family's company. The company's stock plummeted, hitting its lowest point for several days in a row. On the third day of the stock market crash, Ethan's parents showed up at my house. "Amelia, how have you been?" Ethan's mother asked, reaching for my hand with a look of concern. "I've been fine," I replied with a calm smile, pouring them some tea. "So why are you staying with your parents all of a sudden? Ethan told us you weren't feeling well. We were worried about you," she said, trying to get information without being too direct. Ethan hadn't bothered to call me once, but now he was sending his parents to do his dirty work. Before I could answer, my father's voice cut in, cold and firm. "My daughter is perfectly healthy. It's just that her mood has been a bit off lately." The Vances looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable. "What happened? Did Ethan do something to upset Amelia?" Mr. Vance asked with a frown. My father laughed sharply and slammed his teacup down on the table. "The way your son has been acting, well, it certainly leaves an impression." Their faces fell, then, in a slow and deliberate voice, my father told them everything that had happened. How Ethan had let Chloe move into my beach house, how he had stood by while she provoked me, and how at the hospital, He had blamed me for everything without even asking for my side of the story. And your son, my father added, his voice like steel, has already fired every single person at the company who dared to disagree with that woman. That's how the heir to the Vance family treats the woman he married. Mr. and Mrs. Vance turned pale, their expressions changing from shock to shame, from disbelief to horror. This can't be true, Ethan's mother whispered, looking at me. Ethan wouldn't, he's not like that. The facts speak for themselves, I said quietly. Mr. Vance, now shaking with anger, grabbed his phone and dialed Ethan's number. You get over here right now, he yelled. You ungrateful brat, you've brought shame on our entire family. He hung up without waiting for a reply and turned to me and my father, bowing his head. I'm so sorry. We did a terrible job raising our son. But I promise you, Amelia, we will make this right. But what kind of apology could Ethan possibly give? Would he lie and say that I meant more to him than Chloe ever did? Or would he tell the truth, that he had regretted our marriage for a long time? Either way, I didn't care anymore. I stood up without a word, went back to my room, and got the divorce papers I had already drawn up. It was time to end this, quickly and permanently. Not long after, the front door opened and Ethan walked in. To my surprise, Chloe was right behind him, clinging to his arm like a scared little girl. Her face had the same pitiful expression she always put on. My parents, who had just started to calm down after Mr. and Mrs. Vance's apologies, immediately looked angry again. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Ethan still had the nerve to bring her here, to my family's home. He was an absolute fool. Mr. Vance walked over to him and, without saying a word, slapped him hard across the face. You ungrateful child! How dare you bring this woman here? The sound of the slap echoed through the room. Ethan's cheek immediately turned red. He just stood there, completely stunned that his own father would hit him in front of everyone. Dad, please, just let me explain. Explain what? Mr. Vance yelled, slapping him again on the other cheek. You've disgraced the entire Vance family. Ethan, humiliated in front of Chloe, looked like he was about to argue, but before he could say anything, Mr. Vance kicked him hard. To everyone's surprise, Chloe threw herself in front of Ethan, taking the kick for him. She cried out in pain and fell to the floor, clutching her leg, her face pale, and tears streaming down her cheeks. Mrs. Vance, watching Chloe's performance, was shaking with rage. You shameless girl! Even now you're still pretending to be the victim. She moved forward, ready to hit Chloe herself, but Ethan quickly pulled Chloe into his arms to protect her. I watched the whole thing like it was a play, a perfectly staged drama. I couldn't help but laugh a little, and then I clapped my hands slowly. What a touching love story, I said with a smile. Ethan turned to look at me, his face twisted with anger. Amelia, you venomous woman. Stop trying to make things up about me and Chloe. There's nothing going on between us. Our relationship is completely professional. He held Chloe tightly, shielding her from everyone. I'm only doing this to make up for how cruel you've been. The moment he said those words, my father shot to his feet, his face red with fury. My daughter, cruel? Another slap from Mr. Vance hit Ethan across the face. Shut your mouth. One more word out of you and I'll break your legs. Then, Mr. Vance turned to me, his expression softening and his voice becoming gentler. Amelia, we're going to fix this. I promise you'll get a proper resolution. I stood up from my chair and looked around the room, letting my eyes land on Ethan. Since both of our families are here today and everyone has seen the choices Ethan has made, there's no point in continuing this marriage. I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared. I've already signed my part. The property will be divided according to our prenup. At that moment, Chloe's expression changed completely. The look of pain was gone, replaced by a flash of victory in her eyes. One moment she was crying on the floor, and the next she looked perfectly fine. Ethan suddenly pushed her hand away and walked towards me, his face full of disbelief. Amelia, you can't divorce me. And why not? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You're holding another woman in your arms right in front of me, and you're telling me we can't get a divorce? I told you, he insisted. Chloe and I are just co-workers. There's nothing more to it. Ethan, I said calmly, I don't care what the truth is between you and Chloe. All I know is that you made your choice, and your choice wasn't me. There's no reason for us to stay together. I looked him straight in the eye and spoke slowly and clearly. Ethan, do you remember when we first got married? I told you something very clearly. I hate it when people touch my things. And you've crossed that line over and over again. I gave you so many chances. How many of them did you actually take? When something gets dirty, you throw it away. People are no different. I held his gaze, not blinking. Ethan, I don't want you anymore. His face turned white. I picked up the divorce papers and held them out to him. The assets are divided fairly, just like we agreed to before we got married. Ethan didn't take them. Amelia, he said, his voice tight with desperation. I'm not signing them. You're just angry right now. At that moment, my father stood up and spoke to Ethan's parents. Mr. Vance, if you can both agree to a peaceful divorce, we might still be able to talk about working together in the future, but if not, then all deals are off. The Vance Group was already on the verge of collapse. If this deal fell through, the company would be ruined. Mr. Vance Sr. was quiet for a few seconds. Then, with a scowl, he looked at Ethan. Sign it. Under pressure from his parents, Ethan finally took the pen and signed the divorce papers. Just like that, Ethan and I were officially divorced. Chloe stood to the side, barely able to hide the smug look on her face. I met her eyes and gave her a small smile. Congratulations, Chloe. You got exactly what you wanted. That one sentence was like throwing a lit match into a room full of gasoline. You shameless girl! Mrs. Vance suddenly screamed, her voice rising. She grabbed Chloe by the hair, her hands shaking with rage. This is all your fault, I signaled to our butler. Show them out. Just then, our housekeeper came into the room with a steaming bowl. Miss Amelia, your herbal tonic is ready. You should drink it while it's hot. Everyone from the Vance family froze. Amelia, you're pregnant? Ethan's voice was cracked and barely recognizable. I took the bowl and drank the entire thing in one go, then turned to look at him. Last month, I said quietly, the day you hit me at the hospital, I had come to tell you this happy news. But you wouldn't even let me finish my sentence. Ethan's lips were trembling. He couldn't say a word. From that day on, I continued, my voice steady, you lost the right to be this child's father. Forever. My father's face went dark the moment he heard what I said. What did you say? He hit you? Before anyone could stop him, he crossed the room and punched Ethan squarely in the face. Ethan stumbled backward, blood dripping from his mouth. He didn't even try to fight back. You animal, my father roared. You hit my daughter while she was pregnant with your child? Ethan just stood there, dazed and broken. His eyes were fixed on me, full of pain and regret. Amelia, he whispered my name, his voice pleading. Just give me one more chance. Please, just one. A chance? I asked, a bitter smile on my lips. I gave you more than one chance, Ethan. Do you remember? Ethan fell to his knees, his spirit finally broken. Get them out of here, I told the butler. The butler immediately motioned for the Vances to leave. Mr. Vance pulled his devastated son up from the floor. Mrs. Vance dragged Chloe towards the door, still holding onto her hair. The Vance group managed to survive the threat of bankruptcy, but the damage from the divorce was permanent. In just a few weeks, the company's stock value dropped by almost 40%. Several major partners backed out of deals, and more than a dozen large investors pulled their money out. Ethan was no longer the powerful, confident CEO he once was. He spent his days locked away in his villa, surrounded by empty bottles. Alcohol was his only comfort, and he was rarely sober. Chloe refused to give up the position she had worked so hard to get. She showed up at the villa every day, determined to take care of Ethan. She cleaned the house, made him remedies for his hangovers, and when he passed out from drinking too much, she would gently wipe his face and hands. Mr. Vance, she would say softly, holding out a glass of water. Please drink something. Ethan would lift his bloodshot eyes. His gaze would focus for a second, and then he would drift back into confusion. Sophie, is that you? You came back? He would raise a shaky hand and gently touch Chloe's face. Chloe would freeze. This was the 17th time. 17 times that Ethan had mistaken her for the woman who was long gone, the one who had once been his whole world. "I'm not Sophie," she would say softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm Chloe." She would bite down on the pain in her chest, trying to remind him who she was. But Ethan would act like he hadn't heard her. He would just sit there, talking to someone who wasn't there. "Sophie, now that you're back, please don't leave me again." "That's enough!" Chloe suddenly screamed. The glass of water in her hand fell to the floor and shattered. The sound echoed through the quiet room. Ethan blinked, startled by the noise, and his eyes turned to her, confused. "I'm such an idiot," Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "How did I fall in love with someone like you? A man who can only see me as a replacement for someone else." Her chest heaved as the words came tumbling out, each one full of pain. "You deserve this. All of it. You have no one to blame but yourself." Her long suppressed anger finally burst out like a dam breaking. The bitterness and jealousy she had kept hidden for so long came pouring out. "You had a wife, and you didn't appreciate her. Now look at you. You have nothing, and you're still clinging to the memory of your so-called perfect woman." Ethan's eyes suddenly became sharp, the fog of alcohol clearing for a moment. For the first time in days, he was completely sober. "Chloe," he said coldly, "you're not allowed to talk about her like that. Get out. Leave now." Chloe laughed, but the sound was hollow and sharp. "You're still defending her? Ethan, do you even know that she's not dead?" His body went stiff. What? What are you talking about?" "You heard me," Chloe snapped. "She's alive. She faked her own death after taking $50 million from your parents. That was her final act of love. She even left a note asking you to support her worthless boyfriend's company. That was your great love." Her voice rose to a scream, all her rage and humiliation finally boiling over. Without warning, Ethan lunged at her, his hand closing around her throat and pushing her hard against the wall. "Shut up!" she gasped, struggling to breathe, her face turning pale. After a moment, he let her go. Chloe collapsed to the floor, coughing and gasping for air. "How do you think I knew all those little details about you two?" she rasped. "It was her. She came to me. She said that having you help her boyfriend wasn't enough. She wanted more, so she helped me get your trust, your money, everything." Ethan's face turned a deathly white. He staggered backward, shaking. "No. Sophie. She would never." Chloe's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Why don't you call your parents and ask them? Ask them if they gave Sophie $50 million. Ethan shakily dialed his parents' number. The call was short, but the silence and hesitation from the other end of the line was all the confirmation he needed. When his father finally spoke, his words were weak and too late. Ethan slumped to the floor, the phone slipping from his hand. "Because of you two venomous women. I hurt Amelia," he muttered, his voice broken and unrecognizable. Julia stared down at him and then burst into laughter. "Ethan," she said, her voice full of scorn, "don't blame anyone else. You were the one who pushed away the woman who loved you most." Ethan suddenly looked up, his face twisted with rage. "Get out!" he roared. "And don't ever let me see you again." When Ethan went back to the company, he immediately called for an emergency meeting with the board. Without a second thought, he cut all ties with several shady partners. 3 days later, the once successful Jiaheng Technologies declared bankruptcy. Its founder, Jason Huang, was arrested by the police on suspicion of financial fraud. That company had been started by Sophie's boyfriend, and all along, it had been Ethan who was secretly funding it. Around the same time, Chloe received a text message from an unknown number. "I know you were the one who betrayed me." That night, as Chloe was walking home, she started to walk faster, constantly looking over her shoulder, feeling like she was being followed. She turned down a narrow alley, trying to take a shortcut. The next morning, the front page of the newspaper had a shocking story. 2 women's bodies had been found in a dark alley. The police suspected they had killed each other in a violent fight. Ethan stared at the newspaper, his eyes falling on the names of the dead. Chloe Sanders, and Sophie. Time passed quickly. Our daughter, Peyton Reed, was almost a year old. She had an adorable little round face with my eyes and Ethan's nose. Every time I watched her sleep, I couldn't help but kiss her soft cheeks. We named her Peyton, hoping she would grow up to be safe, happy, and free from any worries. Mom, Peyton learned a new word today, I said excitedly, holding my daughter as my mother came in from the garden. My mother smiled, set down her gardening tools, and reached for Peyton, her face full of pride. Our little Peyton is so smart. Come on, say Grandma. Grandma, Peyton said in her sweet little voice, making my mother laugh with joy. Since they had retired, my parents had given me control of the family business. Their greatest happiness each day was spending time with their granddaughter. Ethan came to visit many times over the months, even getting on his knees and begging me to take him back, but I said no every time. Some wounds are just too deep to be healed by apologies. Amelia, my father said one afternoon. Mr. Vance called again. I just shook my head. Dad, the rule is still the same. Until Peyton turns 3, they're not allowed to visit. 3 years went by in a flash. Peyton grew into a bright and spunky little girl. She was stubborn and had a strong will, just like me. When she finally met Ethan's parents for the first time, she greeted them sweetly. Grandpa, Grandma. The old couple was so happy they couldn't stop their tears. Ethan stood nearby, his eyes full of hope. Peyton, I'm your dad, he said gently. Peyton tilted her head and looked at him with her big, curious eyes. Mom said that when someone does something wrong, they have to face the consequences. She said that because you made Mom sad, I can't call you Dad. The room was completely silent. Ethan knelt down to be at her level. Daddy knows he was wrong, he said softly. Daddy regrets it more than anything in the world. Regret doesn't fix things, Peyton replied, her voice innocent but firm. Mom said that once something happens, you can't take it back. There's no cure for regret. Ethan looked up at me, his eyes full of sadness and remorse. I just gave him a faint smile and didn't say anything. There was a time when he could have had a perfect family, but he had destroyed that chance with his own 2 hands. Now I had a successful career, loving parents, and the most wonderful daughter anyone could ever ask for. My life was complete and happy. No one is irreplaceable in someone else's life. Ethan now came by every day to see Peyton, and every time he left, he would stand in the yard for a long time, quietly watching us through the living room window. I knew what he was thinking. If he could only go back in time, he would have done things differently. But life doesn't give you second chances. We all have to live with the choices we make. And as for me, I didn't need his apologies anymore. I didn't need anyone's guilt.